Say their names, let the story be sung. Voices of the past, keep the future young. Stand together, we rise as one. Black Muslim strong till the work is done. But love broke chains with a voice so pure. Call to the prayers, faith was sure. The first black Muslim to stand so tall. His courage and strength still inspire us all. 1040 rows with a scholar's hand, teaching the dean across the land. Built a community, schools of light. Africa's flame still burning bright. Malcolm X spoke truth to the crowd. Fearless and firm, his voice was loud. From Harlem to Mecca, his vision grew. Justice, respect in the world made new. Imam Jamil behind the bars, still teaching faith like the brightest stars. A leader of strength, a fighter for peace. He showed us the way, the struggle won't cease. Daughter of scholars, a teacher, a queen. She built the women with knowledge and dreams. Black Muslim sister, her wisdom was wide. God in the Ummah with honor and pride. Timbuktu shine where libraries grand. Black Muslim knowledge across the land. Golden pages, wisdom stored. Faith and science in one accord. We need our own, a build and grow. A place for the children, a seed of soul. One community standing tall. Together united, we won't let faith let the story be sung. Voices of the past keep the future young. Stand together, we rise. Black Muslim strong till the work is done.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another edition. Let me get this reverb off. Welcome to another edition of African American Heritage Month program. What we're going to cover today, let's advance. Let's open up with the dua. In the name of God, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. Praise be to God, the cherisher and sustainer of all the worlds, merciful benefactor, merciful redeemer, master of the day of judgment. You alone do we worship, and your aid do we seek. Show us the straight way, the way of those on whom you bestow your blessings, not those who you have gained your wrath, nor those who go astray. Amen. So welcome again. Day 6. Well, actually, day 6. Yes, day 6, part 2 of the Muslim African American Heritage Month. And we're going to go over an overview. First, we'd like to thank our sponsors. Never forget them. Let me go back. Imam WD 50 Plus Conference. We'll have more information at the end of the month about that. Bruce Rashid Information Channel and the Talk Bar Production Global Media. Thank you for your sponsoring of the event. Okay, so our goals and purpose, again, is exploring Muslim African Americans from the Middle Passage to today. As we honor Muslim African American Heritage Month this October, we invite you to join us on a powerful 5-week journey through our shared history, from the Middle Passage to our present moment. We'll highlight stories and figures, some of them little known but historical factual. We have one today, who shaped the Muslim African American experience. We're going to show education videos and have respectful dialogue and discussions. Your participation is appreciated and your feedback is always welcome. Thank you. We wanted to make this interactive, educational, not entertainment. All right, so we're going to look at the words that we do in case we have any new people watching. First is Muslim, a person who believes in one creator. Second is an African, a person whose DNA and ancestors can be traced back to the continent of Africa. American, a person who is a citizen of the United States of America, either born here or got their citizenship. Last, a heritage is the history, tradition, culture that is inherited by their parents or previous generations. Now, today we will be, well, let's go over what we looked. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. So we talked about the overboarders, those who jumped or were thrown. We looked at the trauma from Middle Passage and the mass conversion to Christianity. We looked at Omar ibn Said in his life, Abdurrahman Ibrahim and story of his life, Yaro Mama in his life, Kute Kinte, which was very interesting. Harriet Tubman proved she was a Muslim. And then we looked at emancipation, the Great Migration, phase one. So we completed that first part. Now we're moving into the second part. Noble Drew Ali, or the Moorish Science Temple, to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, like 1975, and some of the people that was in that time, it kind of transferred over. And then next week, the following week, we'll look at Elijah Imam Muhammad. All right, so Noble Drew Ali, W. Dufar, we're going to try to cover today. Tomorrow, we kind of look at Elijah and Clara Muhammad, El Hajj Malik Shabazz, Malcolm X, and Muhammad Speaks. Big person there. Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam. Muhammad Ali and Cassius Clay and what he was doing and how he assisted the nation. Jamil El Amin, or H. Rap Brown, who just had a birthday on the 4th. Siraj Wahaj, or Jeffrey 16X, I believe it was. Jeffrey Kersey. All right, so let's get into it. Oh, then we're going to follow. I'm just showing what we're going to follow up with. Behavior's Day, Program and Movement, Resignation from Leadership. Then we're going to talk about Imam W.D. Muhammad Community, Cities and Towns, Muslim Journal, the Mosque Cares. That should be really interesting. The conveners of Imams, mainstream Muslims, and really what's going on currently, 208 to 2025 to today. And then we're going to try to get people to do individual work and recognition shout outs. We have a special guest tomorrow, Ruqayya Muhammad, my little sister. She's going to be talking about her book, Wildflower. She's a publisher, and she's going to be joining us tomorrow and talking about her book in the beginning of the program. So we're excited to have her, inshallah, God willing. All right, then the last week, we're going to talk about Imam W.D. Muhammad 50 plus planning conference, planning for the next 50 years. What do you see? What's your vision? Money, not an object. So we'll be talking about that and let you see how you can get involved with that. Talking about the four birds, housing and government, Islamic education, business and economics, culture and arts. And then talking a little bit about Deantown. What is Deantown? So if you heard of Chinatown, well, think about Deantown, a place where Muslim, African-American Muslims live and work and play and pray. All right, let's jump into it. Noble Drew Ali. So today we have a question. We're going to jump into the question, then look at some pictures and videos and question and answer discussions. Now, this is a very interesting concept. So the question is, did you know that W.D. Farr was a part of the Moorish Science Temple? Because in Nation of Islam history, it just says he's appeared, magically or whatever in Chicago. But what I was able to find is that he was a member before Noble Drew Ali died. He was a member. He founded the Nation of Islam, right? And that's a big claim. That's a big claim, right? So this is my proof. This is the picture of Noble Drew Ali Founders Day, 1928. If you see that up in the top right corner, 1928. Look at the month, October. So that's another relation to why we're doing this, right? Now, who can pick out where WD Fard is? Anybody? Y'all can unmute your phone. Where is WD Fard? Is he in this picture or is he not in this picture? Do you see him? Do you even know who he is? If not, I'm going to highlight him right here, right where the red circle is. That's WD Fard. to Ray, how do you say that? Why do you make that claim? Well, I'm a expert in pictures and like what's called aerial photography, and I can see things other people don't see, right? So I'm gonna blow it up. Boom. That's him, right? Look, you see him right there. Now blow it up. Boom. Now, why do I say that's him? That's a younger him, 1928. The Nation of Islam didn't start about 1931 or 30 or 40, 34, something like that. But look at this. Look at that ear. That's a very distinct ear. Everybody don't have that ear. But look at the ear on this guy. You can't really make his face out because of the old picture, but look at the ear. Look at the ear again. That's a known picture of Fard Muhammad holding the Quran, right? That tells me that's the same person. What's the chances of a light-skinned man joining a black organization with the ears like that? Oh, well, that's just the ear. Everybody got the ears. Okay, what about this? Look at the nose. And look at his nose. And look at this guy's nose. They're all the same, right? These are features that we can look at people and be able to tell who they are. Today they have like facial recognition, and they can tell you just walking by who you are by scanning your face. Look at the chin. Look at this chin. Look at his chin on that one. So that's how I make the claim. These are 3 points. Look at the eyes also, how the eyes fall into his head kind of. He does it on all three, right? Just the hair is different, and one got a fez and one got, the hair uncovered, one got slicked back. But other than that, that tells me that's Fard Muhammad. Anybody can kind of, argue me. But anyway, I think that's very interesting because it was said he just showed up one day in the history of Nation of Islam. But really, when Fard Muhammad died, when Noble Drew Ali died, people was able to break off and start their own thing because whenever a charismatic leader dies, usually the organization disperses and the organization dies. That's usually the pattern. Oh, okay. I'm sure I'll get feedback from that when people get hold of that. All right, let's move into the videos and learn about Noble Drew Ali and Honorable and the Fard Muhammad. Inshallah.
Influence in turn allowed him to demand favors from the In Booker T. Washington's book entitled Up from Slavery, he tells an interesting story about a Moroccan man who visited the Jim Crow South. The man was refused service at a hotel because the attendant believed he was Black American. Once the man provided proof of his Moroccan citizenship, the hotel apologized and gave him a room. The moral of the story, Washington said, was that white Americans didn't have a problem with Black American skin color. Instead, their problem with Black Americans was their social status and culture. In the early 1920s, a new religious group would build upon Booker T. Washington's insight. While Father Divine was in Sayville, New York, teaching his followers that race did not exist, and Marcus Garvey was campaigning for a separate Black nation, a man named Noble Drew Ali was spreading the word that Black Americans weren't really Black Americans at all. You are watching Black Believe. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you never miss a new video. There are conflicting stories about the early life of Noble Drew Ali. One version states that he was born Timothy Drew in the late 1800s to freed slaves in North Carolina. After that, details about his childhood differ widely. Some say he was orphaned and raised by Cherokee Native Americans. There is one theory that he became a celebrated Broadway and circus performer. Yet another theory, held by some followers, was that he was adopted by an abusive aunt who once threw him into the fire. In this version of Noble Ali's biography, he comes in contact with Eastern religions including Islam. According to the official Moorish Science Temple beliefs, in 1913 he moved to Newark, New Jersey, where he established the Canaanite Temple. Additional scholarship has uncovered another possible biography for the leader. In this version, Noble Ali is born Thomas Drew in Norfolk, Virginia in the late 1800s. He is orphaned and adopted. But in this narrative, the Canaanite temple is created not by him, but by a man named Abdul Hamid Suleiman. Suleiman was a Sudanese immigrant who taught a religion of Islamic Masonry, which became very popular. The next record of a Thomas Drew appears in 1918 when he registers for the World War I draft in Newark, New Jersey. Drew is turned away due to severe burns on his arms. He had moved to New Jersey years earlier, worked as a day laborer, and began doing religious preaching, during which time he could have been exposed to Suleiman's teachings. In 1920, Drew is arrested for peddling fake medicines and sent to jail. In 1923, Abdul Suleiman's movement collapsed when he and an associate were charged with child abuse. In 1925, a man named Noble Drew Ali arrives in Chicago and creates the Moorish Temple of Science, a group which incorporates many concepts from the Canaanite temple. Noble Drew Ali never wrote a complete autobiography. He claimed that during his travels to Egypt, he met a high priest who practiced Egyptian magic. This priest told Ali that he was a reincarnation of various important religious figures like Jesus, the Buddha, and Muhammad. This priest trained Ali in mysticism and gave him a lost version of a book which he called the Quran, not to be confused with the Quran of traditional Islam. Noble Ali established several temples in cities like Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., and Detroit, but the center of the organization remained in Chicago. Ali solidified his leadership and began to raise his profile in the cutthroat, complex politics of the Windy City. The Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America, also known as the Circle 7 Quran, is a compilation of 3 literary works. Chapters 1 through 19 are from a text called The Aquarian Gospel of Jesus the Christ by Levi Dowling, which details Jesus' interactions with other religious figures and his travels around the world. Chapters 20 through 45 are from a book named Unto Thee I Grant, published by a group called the Ancient and Mystical Order Rosicrucis, also known as the Rosicrucian Order. Rosicrucianism is a movement which claims to safeguard ancient Egyptian mysteries. The movement became popular in 17th century Europe. Throughout these 2 texts, Noble Ali made a few changes, including replacing the word God with the word Allah. Chapters 46 through 49 are writings authored by Noble Ali himself, which contain instructions and prophecy. The Moorish Science Temple believes that Noble Drew Ali is the last prophet of God. While John the Baptist was a forerunner of Jesus, the Circle 7 Quran claimed that Marcus Garvey was sent to prepare the nations for the arrival of Prophet Noble Drew Ali. The central teaching of the temple is that African Americans are descendants of Moors, an ethnic group who established the holy city of Mecca. They believe that the Moors and other non-Europeans are descendants of tribes like the Hittites, the Canaanites, and the Hamathites, and the Moabites. Noble Drew Ali taught that all of these ethnicities are known as Asiatic people. He claimed the Romans established Christianity after they killed Jesus, who was also a descendant of ancient Canaanites and Moabites. He believed that Jesus' ministry was focused on freeing the poor from their oppressors and promoting peace, but the rich Romans in power rejected it. The 10 Commandments within Christianity were allegedly a way for these rulers to continue to live lavishly while the poor suffered. According to Moorish science, the Prophet Muhammad emerged, fulfilling the works of Jesus and establishing Islam, the true religion of all Asiatic people. Asiatic people are known as Muslims, a term that the Moorish Science Temple claims is synonymous with the more mainstream term Muslims. Historically, the term Moor was used to refer to people of mixed Arab, Spanish, and Berber ancestry who settled in North Africa between the 11th and 17th centuries. The word comes from the Latin term Moris, which the Romans used to describe the inhabitants of Mauritania province. The Mauritania province encompassed portions of present-day Algeria and Morocco. Eventually, Moor was used by Europeans to describe Muslims in general, irregardless of their region of origin. Noble Drew Ali proclaimed that peace would come when each nation began to worship according to their own religion. These nations, including the American Moors, were enslaved stripped of their true identity and labeled as colored or Negro as punishment for refusal to follow their ancestral ways. The prophet Noble Drew Ali is said to have been sent by God to warn Asiatics in America to repent before it's too late. The Moorish Science Temple didn't seek to integrate or intermarry with European peoples. Instead, they believed that Christianity should be reserved for Europeans since it was designed for their salvation, while the Moors should return to Islam, which was created by their Asiatic forefathers. By doing this, the Moors would honor their father and thy mother, that thy days may be longer upon the earth land, which the Lord thy God Allah hath given thee. As a symbol of their new identity, members added the suffix "el" or "bey" to their last names. They paid a fee to the Moorish Science Temple for an identification card, which documented their Moorish nationality. They wore North African attire, like turbans, fezzes, and long robes. While the Circle 7 Quran says that Allah is the one true God, little else in the book relates directly to Orthodox Islam. The other aspects of the 5 pillars of Islam are not mentioned. Historians believe Noble Drew Ali's knowledge of Islam possibly came from the Ahmadiyya movement. The Ahmadiyya Muslim community was founded by Mirza Ghulam Ahmad in 1889 in India. Scholars believe that Ahmad was the Mahdi, or Promised One, which Islamic teachings predict will come at the end of the world to usher in justice, peace, and Islamic rule. The group is perceived as heretical by Orthodox Muslims because of their disagreement over the doctrine called the Seal of the Prophets. Unlike most Muslims that affirm that Muhammad was the final prophet of God and the seal of the prophets, the Ahmadiyya believe that new prophets can still be sent by God, but can never exceed the greatness or importance of the prophet Muhammad. As a result of these beliefs, the Ahmadiyya often face religious persecution. The second caliph or leader of the movement, Mufti Muhammad Sadiq, brought the group's message to the United States in 1920. Sadiq successfully converted people in Philadelphia, New York City, and Detroit. By 1922, he had established a headquarters, mission house, and mosque in Chicago, where lectures and other Islamic services were held. In 1933, Mufti Sadiq left the United States for India. During his stay, he had converted over 700 people to Ahmadiyya Islam, including the first white American female named S.W. Sobolewski, who later changed her name to Fatima Mustafa. The Al-Sadiq Mosque in Chicago remains open today and is the oldest mosque in the United States. The initial exposure to the Ahmadiyya teachings may have made residents of Chicago more receptive to Noble Ali's message when he arrived there in 1925. Marcus Garvey's deportation as a result of a mail fraud conviction likewise left a power vacuum which benefited the new Moorish religion. Noble Drew Ali incorporated the Moorish Science Temple of America in July of 1928. On October 15th through 20th of that same year, the organization held its first national convention. 17 temples representing 15 different cities attended. The organization also established businesses. The Moorish Manufacturing Company sold products like Moorish mineral oil and Moorish bodybuilder and blood purifier. They had a grocery store and a restaurant on the south side of Chicago. They had their own newspaper called the Moorish Guide. Noble Ali wanted to ensure that Moors were received positively. Reports spread around the south side of Chicago of ornately dressed men yelling at white people, making aggressive speeches at work, and sometimes getting into fights. Noble Ali crafted an announcement that was to be read at every temple.
I hereby inform all members that they must end all radical agitating speeches while at work in their home or on the streets. We are for peace, not destruction. Stop flashing your cards at Europeans. It causes confusion.
The prophet's strategy was to merge his idea of a new national identity with accepted norms of law, order, and patriotism. He didn't want his group to be stereotyped as gullible and disrespectful like Black Americans. Instead, he hoped that they would be accepted as superior, dignified, and disciplined Moroccans. To aid in the success of the Moorish movement, Nobel Ali forged connections within Chicago's corrupt political scene. One of the most powerful Black men in the state was named Daniel Jackson. Jackson maintained legal and illegal businesses through a system of bribery. He bought police protection, licenses, and other accommodations for himself and his allies. By investing his profits in public service projects, he received tacit, though uncomfortable, acceptance within the religious Black community. This arrangement allowed Jackson to control the Black vote, whose impact was significant enough to secure the election or the defeat of Chicago politicians. This political influence, in turn, allowed him to demand favors from the incredibly corrupt mayor Bill Johnson. In short, Daniel Jackson had the ability to protect or destroy any Black business. The Moorish Science Temple wanted to ensure he was on their side. Nobel Ali also sought to become a kingmaker himself and wield his members' votes for the organization's benefit. For several months, he made high-profile visits to centers of political life, which were reported in the newspapers. During the Moorish National Convention, a lavish costume ball was held. The timing of the event, which was close to an upcoming election, encouraged state representatives and a judge to attend. The opening address at the ball was given by Alderman Louis B. Anderson, who was running for his 7th term. The closing address was given by Oscar DePriest, a well-connected political player who would go on to become the first Northern African-American member of the U.S. House of Representatives. Daniel Jackson was also invited but declined, citing his busy schedule as a result of a recent appointment to the Illinois Commerce Commission. The Moorish Science Temple endorsed Alderman Anderson, and he easily won re-election. After the election, Nobel drew Ali's visit to the Illinois Capitol for the inauguration of Governor Lewis Emerson was reported in the newspaper. Within 1 year of its incorporation, the Moorish Science Temple gained 7,000 new members. Revenue from the increase in newspaper subscribers, customers, and membership fees came flooding in, and with it, unscrupulous people looking for a lucrative business opportunity. Accusations of embezzlement and misappropriation of funds emerged. In response, Nobel Ali excommunicated leaders in Chicago and Detroit. His supreme business manager, Claude Green Bay, defected and started a rival Moorish faction. Nobel Ali attempted to fend off more splinter groups by traveling to cities and confronting leaders like Supreme Grand Governor Lomax Bay of Detroit, who supported breaking away from the organization. While in Detroit in May 1929, Claude Green Bay was stabbed to death in the Unity Hall of the Moorish Science Temple in Chicago. When Nobel Ali returned to Chicago, he was placed under arrest along with other members for the murder. On July 20th, 1929, while released on bail, Nobel Ali was found dead in his home. His official cause of death was tuberculosis bronchopneumonia, but members of the Moorish Science Temple suspected foul play. Had Nobel Ali been severely assaulted while in police custody? Had a rival assassinated him? Were his political connections fearful that he would reveal their secrets? These and other questions were never answered. An elaborate funeral was held. The investigation into the murder of Claude Green Bay was suspended. Nobel Ali was dead, but the Moorish movement was still very much alive. The September 1929 annual convention for the Moorish Science Temple of America was only the organization's second convention, but it was arguably the most important meeting in its history. In the wake of Nobel Ali's death, 3 contenders surfaced to fight for his legacy. The first was Edward Mealy L., who had been appointed to the position of Supreme Grand Sheikh by Nobel Ali. The second was Charles Kirkman Bey, a former translator and interpreter for Nobel Ali. The third was John Givens L., Nobel Ali's former chauffeur. Mealy L. felt that he was a natural choice for a successor since he had been appointed to one of the highest organizational positions by the prophet himself. He embarked on a nationwide tour and letter-writing campaign to gather supporters. However, by the time the convention arrived, Kirkman Bey had assembled his own group, which strategically prevented Mealy L. from securing the votes needed to become leader. Enraged at this scheme, another member named Ira Johnson Bey, who was well known within the organization as an enforcer, kidnapped Kirkman Bey and stole organizational records. When police attempted to help members secure Kirkman Bey's release, a shootout occurred. Several Moors were injured and 2 police officers were left dead. Johnson Bay was eventually sentenced to life in prison. The kidnapping did not stop Charles Kirkman Bay from his pursuit of power. He gave himself the title of Supreme Grand Advisor and Moderator and proceeded to sue rivals in court to prevent them from using Moorish signs, teachings, and symbols. He named his new organization Moorish Science Temple of America Incorporated, a very similar name to that of Moorish Science Temple of America. Mealy El won his court battle with Kirkman Bay in 1935, but he had already lost the war. The majority of Moors had chosen Kirkman Bay's organization. Later that year, Supreme Grand Sheikh Edward Mealy El passed away, leaving the original Moorish Science Temple of America under the leadership of his wife Delia. When Delia quickly married another member and installed him as a leader, even more members defected to Charles Kirkman Bay's organization and took important historical documents with them. John Gibbons L. claimed that Noble Drew Ali's spirit had entered his body. At the second annual convention, amidst all the fighting, Gibbons L. approached the platform, sat in Noble Ali's vacant chair, and declared, "I am Prophet Noble Drew Ali, reincarnated, and Prophet Noble Drew Ali, the founder. We two are one and the same." He was able to attract some members and started what is known as the Reincarnated Prophet Group. Apparently, Gibbons L. had some involvement in the kidnapping plot targeting Kirkman Bay and was institutionalized for a few years as a result. While in prison, he was able to attract thousands of members in Chicago, Philadelphia, Augusta, Newark, and Baltimore. During this time, another important religious group called the Nation of Islam was growing quickly in Detroit, Michigan. In 1930, a man named Master Wallace Farad Muhammad began teaching that Black people were descendants of the lost tribe of Shabazz, an ancient Asiatic group. He warned that so-called Negroes would not have peace on earth until they returned to Islam, the religion of their ancestors. In 1934, Master Farad disappeared, leaving the group under the leadership of a man named Elijah Muhammad, formerly Elijah Poole. The similarities between Master Farad's teachings and those of Noble Drew Ali are difficult to miss. In the decades since, some Moors have claimed that Master Farad was actually a man named David Ford L., a former member of the Moorish Science Temple of America. However, historians have never been able to confirm Master Farad's identity. His nationality, ethnicity, and religious background is unknown. There is no evidence that he was David Ford L. or that he was a former member of the Moorish Science Temple. An alternate explanation for the similarity between the two groups' teachings could be the overall religious environment of industrial northern cities at the time. Many religions competed for members in Harlem, Detroit, Chicago, and other cities. Black people were welcome to attend meetings led by new preachers without a requirement to become a member. They could also hear about new movements from friends, family, or street preachers who spread their beliefs in public settings. A person would not need to be a member of a group to hear about the group's beliefs and be influenced by them. Despite the similarities, the two organizations would take two decidedly different paths as the 1940s approached. On December 7, 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor and the United States entered World War II. Moorish temple groups had to grapple with Noble Drew Ali's previous teachings, which incorporated a commitment to Moorish Asiatic identity with a simultaneous commitment to American patriotism. Some Black Americans wanted to fight and dismantle stereotypes about Black soldiers to prove themselves deserving of equal civil rights. Others questioned why they should side with the government that continued to treat them as second-class citizens. In the Moorish theology, the Japanese people were members of a pan-Asiatic family whose victory in the war could liberate Moors from the oppressive U.S. racial caste system. Since the 1930s, Japan has sent agents to forge connections with Black American groups. For example, the temples under Charles Kirkman Bay hosted representatives from the Japanese Chamber of Commerce. Organizations like the Japanese Black Dragon Society promised that if Japan invaded the United States, Moors who pledged allegiance to Japan would be treated as equals, given businesses, and other Americans would have to work for them. One group that firmly embraced this belief was the Kansas City Moors, led by Father Prophet Muhammad Bey and his wife Mother Prophet Rose Woods Muhammad Bey. The group had split off from the Kirkman Bay organization around 1935. In March of 1941, Prophet Bey died and his wife assumed full leadership. After Pearl Harbor, Mother Prophet Rose faced the challenge of meeting the political moment and reconfiguring the group's theology to instruct Moors on their response to the war. Unlike her husband, who had distanced himself from Kirkman Bay's organization, Mother Prophet Rose used the larger organization's newspaper entitled The Moorish Voice as a basis for her teachings. She was particularly attracted to the articles by Sister Folsom Bey, who called on Moors to support the Japanese war effort against the United States. Mother Prophet Rose claimed that the Japanese were Eastern Hematites, while Black Americans were Western Hematites. She taught that Japan's military advancement ran parallel with the physical and mental emancipation of Black Americans. She warned that now that Japan had proven its technological and military strength, all Asiatic peoples should band together in solidarity. Strangely, within this ideology, Japan was positioned as superior not only above Europeans, but also above all other Asiatic groups, including the Moors. This was explained by referencing a historical narrative accepted amongst the Moors that the ancient East had tutored and shared knowledge with the ancient West. Mother Prophet Rose claimed that this process was repeating again. Authorities became aware of the Kansas City Moors when they apprehended a drunk Moor who did not have a Selective Service registration card. The Moor was prosecuted for violating the 1940 Selective Service Act, but was released on probation when he said that he would immediately register. As other Moorish groups across the country embraced Japan in varying degrees, which sometimes led to draft evasion, the United States got nervous. The FBI began to infiltrate various groups but struggled to pin down the Moorish Science Temple's exact origins or draw a connection between its various competing factions. In 1942, FBI agents visited Mother Prophet Rose's temple. They warned her and her members that they had an obligation to register for the draft, and if they refused, they would be prosecuted. Nevertheless, the members continued their refusal to register. In response, the FBI issued warrants and raided the temple and Mother Prophet's home. In total, 14 people were arrested and brought in for questioning. After interviewing Mother Prophet Rose, the FBI realized it would be difficult to prosecute her for any crime. They could not prove that a Japanese representative had ever made contact with her temple or that she had ever promoted draft evasion. The publications she referenced in her sermons were produced by the Kirkman Bay organization and not her organization specifically. That men in her congregation took it upon themselves to refuse registration could not be legally blamed on Mother Prophet Rose. The men arrested in the raid remained uncooperative. When asked their ages, they would reply that they were either 18 or 88 years old. 2 ages was placed them outside of the Selective Service laws. They further claimed that the Selective Service registration card was bigoted since it didn't provide a space where the holder could indicate their race or faith. At their arraignment, they all explained to the judge that they didn't register for Selective Service because they believed that their religion exempted them. They reported that as Asiatic Muslims, rather than Americans, the Eurocentric conflict of World War II did not involve them. A few of the men were released after their real ages were discovered, and it was concluded that they would have been too old to register anyway. Some of the men were found to be over 44 years of age, still young enough to register in higher divisions for middle-aged men. These men were offered a plea deal which would have required them to register in exchange for their release. This deal was rejected. In frustration, the FBI agents and county jail officials decided to register on these men's behalf based on information in their prison records. In total, 7 men were indicted and sentenced by a judge to 4 years in prison and a $1,000 fine. In Kirkman Bay's organization, several chapters followed the lead of their newspaper and embraced Japan. The Kirkman Bay Flint Moors hosted Major Satokata Takahashi, an officer in the Japanese Imperial Army, tasked with building support for Japan amongst Black Americans. The Flint Moors believed that Takahashi could have been a reincarnation of Noble Ali. In his speech to the group, Takahashi warned the Moors that if they didn't decide to support Japan and organize against the U.S. government, that they would suffer with the rest of the population when Japan invaded. Like the Kansas City Moors, the Moors in Flint believed that once Japan won the war, they would be given ownership of Michigan businesses. In November of 1942, George Johnson Bay, the son of imprisoned leader Ira Johnson Bay, gave a statement to the FBI which detailed the connection between the Moorish Science Temple and subversive Japanese organizations. This testimony led officials to detain Charles Kirkman Bay. The experience of being questioned and the threats of incarceration caused Kirkman Bay to abruptly shift away from his pro-Japanese rhetoric. In the same month that he was questioned by authorities, Kirkman Bay's Moorish Voice publication, which had inspired Mother Prophet Rose, printed an article announcing members who were at military training camp. Temples were asked to send in the names of all members who had been drafted into the military so that they could be featured in future editions of the paper. Kirkman Bay's organization also submitted members' military service to the Chicago Defender to highlight their contributions in World War I and World War II. Other Moorish splinter groups compromised between political protest and political patriotism. In Ira Johnson Bay's organization, a member named Eddie Bay reported from military training camp, but refused to trim his beard, remove his fez, eat the Army's food, or wear a necktie. After 2 weeks of confinement for his refusals, accommodations were made. Eddie Bay's sheikh gave him an exemption from certain dietary laws and from wearing a fez. The Army allowed him to keep his beard as long as it was trimmed lightly. World War II would be a pivotal point in the Moorish movement's history. Their unwillingness to mount sustained and widespread protest against selective service registration saved the organization from destruction by government forces, but simultaneously caused the movement to lose its appeal. Meanwhile, the Nation of Islam maintained its opposition to fighting in the war. In 1942, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and his sons were sentenced to 4 years in prison for preaching sedition and evading the draft. They waived parole and served their full sentences, even though their incarcerations caused membership to stagnate. In 1953, a gifted member named Malcolm X was released from prison and began spreading the organization's teachings. The Nation of Islam's membership skyrocketed. The Moorish movement had made a miscalculation. The Black community wanted a vehicle through which to vent their anger at being treated as second-class citizens at home while being required to die like first-class citizens abroad. In the 1940s, a separate national identity was not enough. The Black community wanted a separate political identity as well. On June 16, 2021, a woman named Shanetta Little arrived at her new house in Newark, New Jersey. After growing up in foster care, putting herself through college, and becoming a customer service specialist at a major car company, closing on a home was like a dream come true. When she tried to enter her house, she found that her key didn't work and the locks had been changed. The next day, she returned with a locksmith, and her dream quickly turned into a nightmare. She entered her home and found 2 men inside who claimed that the house belonged to them. Suddenly, Shanetta remembered those strange letters she had begun receiving shortly after she purchased her home. The letters bore a golden seal, had incomprehensible legalese, and claimed that the sender was the rightful owner of her house. At the time, she dismissed these letters as some kind of scam or hoax. She called the police, who reviewed the paperwork from both parties, Miss Little's legitimate property deed and the men's documents allegedly from the Al-Moroccan Empire. The officers confirmed that Miss Little had lawfully purchased the house and asked the man to leave. They complied. Not more than an hour later, a man ran past Miss Little on her porch, opened her door with his own key, and locked it behind him. Terrified, Miss Little called the police again. This time, a SWAT team responded. The man who broke into Shanetta Little's home is legally named Hubert John, but goes by the name Jaleel Hugh L. Sometime around 2018, Hugh L's social media posts became dominated with information about Moorish license plates, identity cards, and legal advice. He's associated with an organization called the Al-Moroccan Empire Consulate, which claims to represent the land of Lenape Hoking. The organization's website lists Hugh L. as the Consul General. In the What We Do section, the page states that the organization is tasked with protecting in the receiving state, the United States, the interests of the sending state, Morocco, and of its nationals, both individuals and bodies corporate, within the limits permitted by international law. Other sections of the website indicate that people can contact the owner for the creation of tax liens, building contracts, certificates of tax sale, deeds, and other fictitious documents. Historical Lenape-Hoking was the land which crosses modern-day New York City, Philadelphia, and the state of New Jersey, and was inhabited by the indigenous Lenape tribe. Over time, this tribe was disenfranchised, displaced, and forcibly assimilated. Today, its descendants are represented by the Nanticoke Lenni Lenape tribal nation, which includes the Lenape and the Nanticoke peoples. This organization has no historical or legal connection to the Al-Moroccan Empire Consulate. On June 17, 2021, Hugh L. was arrested for criminal mischief, burglary, criminal trespassing, and making terroristic threats. He was later released on his own recognizance pending trial. Shanetta Little's story is one of many from people who have come in contact with those calling themselves Moors or Moroccans and claiming the laws of the United States do not apply to them. Like in the early days of the Moorish Science Temple, people have lashed onto the new national identity proposed by Nobel as a means of rebellion against the current legal status quo. This trend can be traced back to the 1970s, where an ideology called the Sovereign Citizens Movement was formed. One of the earliest sovereign citizen groups was called Posse Comitatus, which is Latin for power of the county. The group claimed that the United States was founded as a Christian republic where the individual was sovereign and the highest level of legitimate authority was the county sheriff. They believed that the country had strayed away from its founding principles due to manipulation by a Jewish-led communist conspiratorial group. They predicted that manipulation of prices allowed this fictitious group to control increasing amounts of land until eventually they would control the entire food supply. According to the group's ideology, the enforcement of tax laws is illegal, and like other white supremacist militia groups, the right to keep unregistered firearms is considered sacrosanct. This group has been known to become violent when confronted by law enforcement. In 1983, a leader in the movement killed 2 federal marshals in North Dakota when they tried to arrest him for violating his parole. After the shootings, the man was able to escape and evaded capture for months before he was finally killed in a shootout in Arkansas. As sovereign citizen ideology spread across the far right, it was also finding fertile ground in Black communities. Moorish groups had experimented with tax evasion strategies as early as the 50s and 60s. However, by the 1970s, a John Givens L. splinter group would take these tactics several steps further. In the Baltimore reincarnated Moorish temple, 2 siblings, Richardson and Timothy Dingle L., decided to start their own organization in 1975. Richardson called himself the reincarnated prophet Nobel III, and Timothy called himself the Supreme Grand Resurrector. Another man named Clarence R. Reynolds L. joined with the pair and established the Moorish School of Law and History Incorporated, number 13, or MSHL. The organization attracted many college students who helped it to research laws and challenge policies in court based on Moorish beliefs. In one of their early victories, the MSHL successfully forced the Maryland Department of Motor Vehicles to remove the terms Negro and Black from Moors' licenses. Attempting to build upon this success, they tried to contact the Congressional Black Caucus in order to organize a legal challenge to the common interpretation of the Emancipation Proclamation. Their argument was that Abraham Lincoln had intended for emancipated slaves to be made legal persons and to be compensated for their labor. They wanted to legally resurrect Lincoln's true intentions behind the proclamation. When the Congressional Black Caucus ignored the group's overtures, they turned their focus to more local legal issues like tax liens and property laws. Soon, Baltimore and Philadelphia newspapers were reporting arrest of Moors for various tax evasion schemes. The tactics of the MSHL spread throughout an already decentralized Moorish ecosystem. Organized crime syndicates with leaders bearing names suffixed with L or Bey justified their activities under the auspices of a separate national.
Me coming from a Negro, black and colored state, I was one didn't even know what nationality was until the prophet found me. So once I started.
The story of the NOI itself starts with a man variously known as Wali Farad, W.D. Fard, Wallace Fard Muhammad, and Farad Muhammad, but who is best known as Master Fard Muhammad. According to his successor, Elijah Muhammad, he came alone. He began teaching us the knowledge of ourselves, of God and the devil, of the measurements of the earth, of other planets, and the civilizations of some of the planets other than the earth. He measured and weighed the earth and the water. He gave the history of the moon, the history of the two nations that dominated the earth. He gave the exact birth of the white race, the name of their God who made them and how, and the end of their time, the judgment, how it will begin and end. Master Fard Muhammad is officially noted by the NOI as having arrived in Detroit on July 4, 1930, and departed on June 30, 1934. There is an older tradition of an earlier arrival 20 years previous, as well as attendance at the University of Southern California. In the interim, Fard established temples in several cities and created a hierarchical organization composed of a men's military training unit called the Fruit of Islam, FOI, a minister's corps, and a women's auxiliary called the Muslim Girls Training and General Civilization Class, MGTGCC. This infrastructure was built upon Fard's ideological foundation known as the secret ritual, which, arranged in a question-and-answer format, became better known as the Lost-Found Muslim Lessons or simply as the Lessons. Within these lessons were the basic elements of an ancient mystery school. It involved secrecy from outsiders, an esoteric ritual containing keys for recognition between fellow members, a cohesive worldview, and a tradition that could be explained only to initiates. Central to these teachings were the knowledge of self and the black man's nature of him being God. According to these teachings, the black man was by nature divine, and in fact was the original man, ancestor of the human race, antedating Lewis and Mary Leakey's discoveries of early human remains in Africa by nearly 30 years. White people, on the other hand, were produced out of black people by a scientist named Jacob approximately 6,000 years ago. Discovering a recessive gene in the black man, Jacob used a system of eugenics on a group of 60,000 people on an island and, after 600 years, was able to create a biological mutation, the white man. Of course, Jacob did not live to see his creation, but he left behind an infrastructure to propagate his system, as well as the ideological basis for white supremacy. The race was destined to rule for an allotted period extending to 1914 AD. Though, as Fard's messenger Elijah Muhammad put it, a few years of grace have been given to complete the resurrection of the black man, and especially the so-called Negroes whom Allah has chosen for this change of a new nation and world. They, so-called Negroes, have been made so completely mentally dead that extra time is allowed. Master Fard Muhammad came from the holy city of Mecca, and he taught Elijah Muhammad actual facts. That which is actual means it exists, it's fact or real. A fact is that which actually exists, it is reality, it is truth. Why did Master Fard Muhammad give us actual facts? It is because you cannot build anything until you know the actual facts. The problem with us is that we have believed what others have told us, but the actual facts we may not be acquainted with. How could the enemy rule us if we had the same knowledge that he has? Regardless to your degrees, the enemy has never shared with you what he has of knowledge. That is why when you come out of college, you go to him and look for a job. It is because you are not prepared to make a job for yourself. Master Fard Muhammad was only among us 3 years and 4 or 5 months. He said he came to us from the holy city of Mecca in Arabia. Master Fard Muhammad came to Detroit to a place called Black Bottom, where the people lived in the deep ghetto. He started teaching there, going door to door, like an ordinary salesman. This is what is meant in the scripture where it says, "He made himself of no reputation, and became obedient even unto death." The Bible says, "He stood and he measured the earth." When Master Fard Muhammad came, he told us that the total area of the land and water of the planet Earth is 196,940,000 square miles. He said the circumference of the planet Earth is 24,896 miles, and all of us had to memorize this. The diameter of the Earth is 7,926 miles. The area of land is 57,255,000 square miles. The area of water is 139,685,000 square miles. He said the Pacific Ocean covers 68,634,000 square miles, and the Atlantic Ocean covers 41,321,000 square miles. The Indian Ocean, he said, covers 29,430,000 square miles, and the lakes and rivers cover 1 million square miles. The hills and the mountains cover 14 million square miles, the islands are 1,910,000 square miles, and the deserts are 4,861,000 square miles. Mount Everest is 29,141 feet high, and the producing land is 29 million square miles. The Earth weighs 6 sextillion tons, a 6 followed by 21 zeros, and is 93 million miles from the Sun, traveling at the rate of 1,0371/3 miles per hour. Light travels at the rate of 186,000 miles per second, and sound travels at the rate of 1,120 feet per second. The diameter of the Sun is 853,000 miles. We were just students under a master teacher who asked us to study. Then, Master Fard Muhammad began to tell us about the distance of the planets and the life that is on the planets. He taught Elijah Muhammad, who was from the cotton fields of Georgia and who only went to the 4th grade of school. If you compare what Master Fard Muhammad said 71 years ago with the dimensions that the scholars have given, every year they have gotten closer and closer, until now their computations are similar with Master Fard Muhammad, the man who taught Elijah Muhammad and came to raise us up from a dead level and make us rulers over those who once ruled us, not by guns and sticks, but by giving us a superior knowledge. Before you knew anything about Mars, Master Fard Muhammad called Mars an inhabited planet. He said Mars is 141,500,000 miles from the Sun, and she travels at the rate of 1,0371/3 miles per hour. He said her diameter is 4,200 miles. Master Fard Muhammad said Mercury is also an inhabited planet and is 36 million miles from the Sun.
All right, we're going to stop it there. But if you're interested in getting more information, you can always go online and pull up those videos on Master Fard Muhammad and Noble Drew Ali. So what we want to do is go ahead and open up for discussion. That was very interesting. Any feedback from the guest? I think the coming from slavery into that type of information, and just even if it was incorrect, I think gave people some kind of status. So that's why they were so attracted to both of those movements, because it gave them some type of belonging and some information that filled them back up from where they were empty as a slave. So maybe that's why, Noble Drew Ali, Moorish Science Temple, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Fard Muhammad, Nation of Islam was so attractive. And they borrowed information from Islam and mixed it with some other stuff and allowed them to be very successful. People were attracted to it. It was better type of information than some people for Christianity who seek more knowledge. I don't even know if that information is correct. I might run it through AI and see with the circumferences and the information if that's even possible to get. But it must have been some type of higher knowledge that was given in Moors and Egyptian languages. So I'm going to allow anybody to have some questions or to ask. And you did see where the Moorish Science Temple people said that W.D. Farr was a person in the Moorish Science Temple that broke off when they were having the dispute and everybody was moving out. So that was very interesting. I enjoyed that because I didn't know that information.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Um, can you can you elaborate further on the books that Noble Drew Ali used as his sources?
Yes, he said that he had the Bible, part of the Bible, some of his own writing, some of the Quran, and some of the other that was main information. So they compiled those particular books, and that was what they were calling incorrectly the Quran. So it's not the same Quran as we know as the Quran, but it was a collection of several books, sort of like the Bible. So I thought that was interesting too. I didn't know that.
Mm.
But it's very interesting. I mean, Noble Drew Ali's camp, Moorish Science temples are still around today. And I have a video for that. Maybe I'll show another time, but they talking about it, and it's different. It's like Islam but mixed, sort of like with the Nation of Islam today. Islam but mixed with, sort of like the Ahmadiyas, so like the other groups, the other veins have Islam mixed with other people's ideas and thoughts, sort of like Christianity. And we know from Christianity, it got mixed up based upon people's changing the Bible and the 66 authors. So then that's why Quran came, that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was, revealed the Quran from Allah, the creator, and it goes unchanged for the most part. Vowels were added, but for the most part, it goes unchanged. And people still have translations today and understandings today where they're still trying to mix up people or confuse people. So I thought that was interesting. So we're going to go ahead and close out. Appreciate everybody coming. And we thank Allah that we have the information. And again, thanks to our sponsors. And we'll do what we can to move forward. So tomorrow we'll have Elijah Muhammad, which is a whole video in itself that's very interesting. And we'll move into Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali on the following days this week. Then even talk about Louis Farrakhan, Siraj Wahaj, and some other veins of the information. And so you saw the people travel from Middle Passage slavery to the Great Migration, and now they're coming up with these organizations that are really interesting and complex as they become citizens and people of America. So let's close. While us, by the token of time, surely man is lost, except those who have patience and perseverance. Amen. Thank you again for coming, and we will see you tomorrow, hopefully. Have a great one. Peace be upon you.